what I was doing in the time-lapse video there, I was cutting out screenshots of the sides of the Stodola, which were taken from the game, and I printed those out to scale, and then I was cutting them out and gluing them. Actually, what it was is it was a 3M photo mount. You spray it on the back of the screenshot pieces here, and then you just apply them to the side of the Stodola. Lessons learned from this: use a sharp knife, use a sharp X-Acto blade. Make sure that's nice and sharp, because I noticed when it gets dull is you don't have nice clean edges. A sharp blade is paramount. Also, I don't know if you could see in that video, I was filing something, and what I was doing is, here's the first end that I've done. And if you saw the filing, what happened here, this is the second one I've done. Last night, I applied grout. I had grout that matched the color of this, so I wanted to see what it would look like in these recesses here. And it didn't work out too well. I used white glue, and it just was kind of chunky and it didn't sit right. So what I was doing is filing out that grout, because these pieces were not fitting correctly in their slots, because it gets in the crevices right in the corners, and then it solidifies and it becomes a problem. I noticed I don't even need the grout. What I did is, and I wasn't sure how it was going to look, I painted the recesses, the edges of the recesses, black, and I think it works very well, because it just basically looks like a shadow. Even with the light on it, it kind of looks like a shadow. And you can see here I've got the sides to still do, and it looks like a mess, which is great. This is the one time that I think I like brush painting, because usually I airbrush. I don't like to use a brush. It looks kind of sloppy now, but that'll look great when the screenshots are cut out and put in there. One problem is, you can see these little squiggles right here. What that is it's a marker that I was using to darken the edges, because when you cut the paper, you know, that edge of the paper is still white, so you want to tone that down, and I've been using a marker. This is the best marker to use. It's a big thick one, that way you don't run across and hit your face. I was using a smaller marker, and as you can see, it didn't work very well, because now I've got these squiggles that just don't look right. So what I'm going to attempt to do is get some paint and kind of just brush that out, weather them out, kind of make it look like a little splotch right there, like a weathering splotch, and hopefully that turns out okay. This photo paper, after it's printed, it's kind of delicate. I don't want to say delicate, but you can easily mar the surface of this stuff. And with the photo paper I'm using, it's matte photo paper. I don't have the package handy. It's just your regular, I bought it at Staples. Just matte photo paper and print it out. But I'm excited about this. I think they look great. And they also match the game. I went through, I don't want to say the hassle, but I went through the effort to match every panel up as they correspond in the game. So every panel you see here matches the Stodola in the game, and there we have one side, one end here, and one end here. Oh, and also I have sitting here is the statek kulna, I believe that's how that's pronounced. That means farm shed. These are all over the island. Like I said, they're just like the Stodola. They're more prevalent out in the countryside, and there's, I think, 23 of them. 23 of them within the towns, the 18 towns on Everon, and I've got all 23 casted. or cast, I should say. I've got a few casting blanks over here, and I've gone ahead and painted the recesses because this is the only detail on the kulna, is that little recessed window panel door. So I went ahead and blacked that out because that's a necessity on those edges inside there, so it doesn't show through when, where is that? There it is. That's a recessed door. It's the only detail on the Stodola, or I'm sorry, kulna. This is that Volmer tile roof, flexible stuff, good stuff. Cut this very accurately just with scissors. Probably just put a separate video of this kulna here. One thing is it printed out very dark, more than I think I would like. And I don't know why I did that. I recently changed printers, and I had the colors almost as on my old printer. They would print out pretty much, I've lightened them up, and I would print them out and they would print accurately. I switched to a new printer, and everything, no matter how I try to tweak it, the photo, it still prints the same. It comes out the same brightness. So the next step will be to get these sides paneled with the screenshot sheets. I've glued or adhered the screenshot panels to the side of this Stodola. If you notice, though, there's missing an end piece on both ends, and also this little thin top piece as well that's supposed to be cut out. Now let's run along the top there, that top edge. And the reason that I did not put this on, or these two, I had them printed out. I can't use them because when I scaled, I made an error when I scaled my my panels inside Google SketchUp, because what I did is I scaled them only to this end right here, this side. I only scaled them to this width here and this width here. And that may not seem like a problem, but I did not compensate for this additional end piece right there. So I need to go back into the program and rescale both the end pieces to this total width here. But other than that, I think it looks good. I had to cut a little bit of this. I had to trim a little bit of this, what I call the center panel here. And when I do that, I have to make sure that this lines up with the door. So if I need to come trim more over here, I make sure that it's on this end so that this does not pull the doorway over. And this actually worked out, I think, very well. And one thing I didn't say about scaling those screenshot panels. Sometimes that takes just as long as designing the building in Google SketchUp. It's a very tedious, it doesn't have to be, but sometimes with certain angles and certain roof angles you run into problems, and each panel has to be cropped and cut and then pasted and then brought into the program and then scaled. I'll probably get into that a little bit later. I'll talk about that. So what's next? Well, I could put the same sides on my last panels on my last side, and then I'll have to redo those ends, of course. One thing I did not mention, which should be pretty obvious, is I can't put the end pieces on anyway until I get these corners glued together and the building is all in one piece. Only then can I put those end panels on. So I wouldn't have been putting them on anyway. I just noticed here when I was about to cut out these pieces, I actually did these end panels to the correct width. This is actually this piece is actually thicker than this, which it needs to be to have that other end piece come on. So I knew what I was doing on that first. This was the first scaled sheet I did of the sides of the Stodola. So apparently I knew what I was doing then, and then I dropped the ball on that second sheet, which is good, which means I only have to redo one sheet. Okay, I've added the panels to the last side of the Stodola. Right here, like I said earlier, minus the top runners and the two end pieces, which will be put on later. And what's left is to just glue these sides together. And what I did before, see, I've got each piece marked. I've got an AN, a BN, an A, B, and B. And the reason for that is what I do first is when I select the pieces for one Stodola, I'll match up their ends and I'll file, I guess you could call it custom file, and I specifically file each corner to match up so they mate. And so I've got to, we'll get this thing glued together. I'm done for this weekend, but maybe I'll do something during the week. I have to say, overall, I'm very, very, very pleased with the result, because this is the first. I did the kulna. I did the kulna this weekend as well. It's the first time that I've got the printouts glued and a structure completed, and it really proves that the concept works. In fact, years ago, a few years back when I started this, I had to print out these sides to scale and see that I was capable of doing it. Because if I couldn't do that, then there was no point in doing any of it, because it just, to try to replicate these patterns and this, it just would be impossible. You might come up with something in the neighborhood or relatively, but not spot on. I wanted everything to be exactly as it is in the game. And this weekend, what was it, April of 2012, now we're into February of 2016, almost 4 years ago is when I figured out that the concept would work, and now here it is. What I haven't shown yet is all the castings that I have and all the buildings that are, all the casting blanks that I have, and that would explain why it's been several years. And to design every one of these buildings in a Google SketchUp from scratch and get the measurements just right. It's been a long road, but it's starting to really look like Everon. What's next? Well, once I get a lot of these structures, a few of these structures built that'll fill a town or have enough buildings for a specific town, then I will start building modules of the towns and run the railway through them. There'll be a lot of discussion about that later. Really pleased with this, except for, of course, this little headache here. I haven't weathered that out yet. These little little squiggle lines from the pen, from the marker. That won't happen again. And I get faster and faster as I do more, which I would expect anyway. So next step, glue these together and add a roof. I have glued all 4 of the walls together. I used super glue, also known as CA, in the corners here. And what I may do also is I may come back in and put a bead of resin between these 2 resin pieces. What I found the best glue for 2 resin pieces is resin itself. So I may do that as I cast another building in the basement. I'll take the leftovers and just run a line of resin in there, and hopefully with capillary action it'll suck that down into that joint and weld these 2 together. It's very solid as it is. I've also added the last of the side panels, which couldn't be put in place until the ends and the sides were glued together. This one here, this here, and if I turn it over, this piece here, and this piece right here, and also the runner along the top. On the on that end where I had the weather, or the I had some magic marker lines that when I was going over the edge to get rid of the white face on the edges, I hit the face of the panels. And what I did on this one panel is I just simply replaced it. I found that I can remove these panels with an X-Acto blade and actually take them off after they've been adhered. And at least it removes the upper surface with the image. And then I just scrape that down, and then I get another one and just reapply it, and it works good. On this upper splotch, I left that. I didn't want to go through and replace this upper piece here, because this piece up here is attached to this side piece, so I didn't want to bother with that. I just left that black weathering splotch, and all that I did there was I took some old Flow Quill paint, weathered black, and I applied that. Of course, this Flow Quill brand is no longer available, and that's a sore subject, and I don't even want to go into that. So I also found that I can use this blue painter's tape to mask. However, I found out the hard way that I have to take it off the roll, apply it to a scrap piece of paper, put it down, peel it off, apply it again, peel it off, and apply it a 3rd time and peel it off. Because what that does is, by doing that, it removes a lot of the tackiness of the tape, which will take up the surface of this photo paper when it has not been protected. But it will work, so that's a good thing. Okay, one last thing we will do before we move on to constructing the roof is to give it a coat or 2 of this matte finish. And really, I probably should have sprayed the papers that have the printouts as they come off the printer. I probably should have sprayed it with that first, and then cut them out and applied it with the matte finish already applied, because this offers a lot of protection to this. Like I said earlier, this stuff gets damaged, marked, and will pick up any kind of debris, or it's just very prone to scratching and marring. So I think what I'll do in the future is, rather than there's a little spot there I need to black out. So rather than spraying the model with the matte finish, I'll go ahead and do that so that when it first comes off the printer, so that my printouts are protected right off the bat. So now it's on to constructing the roof with some ABS plastic, putting the Noch tile textured paper on top of the ABS, and we will have our finished Stodola. I want to show you how something as simple as 2 rubber bands could be very useful, and it basically acting as a third hand in allowing me to look around the model. What I'm looking at is I'm looking at this length, this overhang depth of the eaves, how much comes off the edge along here, how that looks. And this isn't in the exact position, but this at least gives me an idea of what I'm looking at when it is glued in place. And let me see if I can get some light on that. It's looking very good. In fact, I have the game pulled up on that ledge of the game here. You can see. That it's looking pretty good. There's not that much overhang on these eaves here. Not a lot of overhang on the edge there either. My lighting is terrible, I think. Let's bring it back. It's kind of silly trying to do it this way, but I think it's looking pretty good. I have the roof tacked on the resin pieces along here, here, and here with super glue, and I'm looking around at it and I think it looks good. What I'm going to do now is where this ABS joint runs along the top here, I'm going to put some plastic weld in this joint, and that will fuse these 2 pieces of ABS together, giving us a nice strong seal along the peak. And I will probably also run a bead of hot glue in along these sides. That hot glue is that works very well. I've used some Plastruct bonding, which is basically, this is a plastic, it says it's a plastic solvent cement. It's a welder is what it is. It chemically welds, it chemically melts the plastic along the seams and then fuses it together. So 2 pieces of ABS basically become 1 piece fused together, and it's even hard to see the seams now. In a lot of cases you can see if the seams are placed if it's very small and very close together, the two pieces, the seam will actually disappear, giving you one solid piece of ABS. And I ran some weld down this peak seam, and I ran some on the outside along here. And it's funny because you can actually feel the difference in your hand. You can feel this become one piece of ABS. It's so much more solid and rigid. So what's left here? Well, I may run the hot glue in here, which I think I'm going to do for just some extra tack to hold this this roof on. And then it's on to putting the tile, textured tile, on the ABS. I just went around the edges of the roof with the weathered black, and I've painted the eaves, the undersides of the roof, the eaves weathered black, as long as along the peak there. This looks sloppy, but the reason for this is if the roof tile does not lay exactly on that corner, or they don't exactly meet up exactly in the middle, we have some black out there. And so we see black and not gray. And in the future, when I build more Stodolas, I will paint this ABS before it gets applied to the model, because no matter how careful you are in masking, you always run the risk of getting paint on your finished model. So in the future, the undersides of the roof, the eaves there, will be painted in advance. Next step and final step to the Stodola build is to apply this Noch textured self-adhesive roof panel. And this is Noch 57348. And it's a perfect match, if I can get it in focus, for the tiles in the Everon game. Last and final step, here we go. I finished installing the Noch 3D tile roofing material, and I've got to say I like the results. And this completes the Stodola build. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this build. We'll finish out the video with some still shots of the completed model. And what's next? Most likely it will be the house statek, or farmhouse. Thanks for watching Everon Railways.